All right, it is Wednesday, August 26th, 2020, and this is the Fight Business Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Auger, and with us we've got a very special guest, the exclusive medical director and orthopedic surgeon for Sanford MMA, Dr. Bradley Reeves. Dr. Reeves, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Patrick?
I'm doing good. As good as could be, given the pandemic situation.
At least we can do this from closed doors.
Exactly. So for those of the fans watching that don't know who you are, you've had a medical background for over 27 years in the field, 10 years as the medical director of sports medicine, I believe, for Sanford Health. How'd you get involved with MMA?
Well, it just started happenstance. Once I got to Sioux Falls, one of the best managing agents in MMA is actually a South Dakota resident. And through connections that he knew people that knew that Sanford was really putting together a sports program, he brought a couple of those fighters through and I met them, but I really had very little involvement with MMA at that point in time. And then he had one of his clients that was having trouble getting seen. He was from New York. He wanted to fly him out, and so he did. And we did surgery and got him fixed up. And the next thing you know, he had a title shot against Anderson Silva, and I went out with him to Vegas for that fight. And it was just a great thrill to see that young man win that title. And then after that, the ball just kind of started rolling, and more MMA athletes started coming my way, and we would fix them and then fix the next one. And so it was just kind of a slow ball rolling. And then by the time I was ready to kind of stop my regular sports medicine practice, there was this concept of, why don't we just build a team with this? Let's just build a team around great coaching, great facilities, great sponsors, and let's provide the medical care, and let's really get in deep. And so fortunately, Sanford Health, having always been very progressive, especially when it comes to sports and sports medicine, agreed to do that. And so that's where the juggernaut kind of took off. But we were very fortunate to get to see many great fighters, most of which were clients of David Martin, and we really have had a great run with a number of great fighters, but also a number of world champions.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying just how good Sanford MMA is in terms of its dominance. You've got welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, you've got two-weight champion and one championship Aung La Nsang. Gilbert Burns, who was supposed to fight Kamaru Usman, is number one contender there, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But just in terms of you've hit on it a little bit in terms of how that partnership came about. What was your role in that with Sanford sponsoring the team? And did you, when this all came about, was this something that you were a big proponent of? Were you instrumental in getting that to happen?
Yes, I mean, every once in a while you get a good idea. And as I was looking into leaving my day-to-day sports medicine practice, I knew that I still wanted to stay involved with sports medicine to some degree, but be able to spend more time with family and move back to our roots in Arkansas. And so Dave Martin and I started discussions about what would it be like to put together a team and actually change the sport for how we treat these world-class athletes. And so we put together a proposal, presented it to the senior administration at Sanford, and they felt like this was a no-brainer. There were already world champions in the stable. We already had excellent reviews in terms of just being around good people. And I think that's one of the things that really sold Sanford, was that the people that would be on this team, and of course, kind of the patriarch of the team is Robbie Lawler. And so the small window, everything's a small thread in life. and Robbie tore his ACL and came out and had it fixed, and we started a lot of discussion. And as we rehabbed him, we became closer and closer friends. We had attended fights together. He cornered Logan Storley, who's another one of our really excellent undefeated fighters, and so we just developed that relationship, and we just started talking about how would it change the sport to provide facilities, strength and conditioning, world-class coaching, as well as the medical side, and let's be really smart. Let's go use our technology. We have the Sanford Sports Science Institute that Dr. McFadden and her group run, that can look into things, nutrition, how we strengthen muscles and how we keep them from breaking down. We have Dr. Thane Muntz there, who is really leading the charge for concussion and prevention of CTE, and we've actually Anderson Silva came to Sanford and has donated sums of money for this research. So there are a lot of things going on at Sanford that make it a great research facility, as well as a great healthcare provider facility, but also they have a vision of how to make this sport better and safer, and dedicate a lot of resources towards these world-class athletes.
Yeah, and you mentioned Robbie Lawler there, who has done nothing but sung your guys' praises since the takeover, saying that especially as he gets on later in his career, he feels confident and comfortable with you and your team, giving him the medical care necessary so that he can still compete as he gets closer and closer towards that retirement date, which who knows when that'll be. I mean, knowing Robbie, you can never tell. But so you've talked a lot about the benefits that the fighters get out of this, which are all amazing. But just from a business perspective, what does Sanford get out of this? What helps? How does it help Sanford Health to have that benefit?
Well, I think, if you go back to the history of Sanford, back to 2007, when Mr. Sanford made the large donation to what then was Sioux Valley Hospital in Sioux Falls. From there, the administrative vision has really expanded. And so now Sanford Health is a huge conglomerate of healthcare reaching into North Dakota, all of South Dakota, the western third of Minnesota, over and spilling out into the western states. So now it's a huge juggernaut of rural healthcare, the largest rural footprint in the country. But they also want to have national influence. And so now they've started looking at ways to build a national brand. So Sanford's investment in this, is it's nearly philanthropic, to create an environment in which we can enhance the lives of these pro athletes. And this is just part of our patient base whom we serve. But also it gives them a national branding. They certainly are seen now on the national stage, certainly as far as MMA is concerned. I mean, it was very humbling to be nominated as one of the top gyms in our first year of actual existence. And a lot of that has to do with Sanford Health and its investment and its commitment to excellence. So I think they get to be on the national and international stage. I mean, goodness gracious, we were in Tokyo as Aung La Nsang defended his title against Brandon Vera, and there we were, in an international setting. What was a small hospital at one point in time in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, now has a bit of an international flair to it. So I think Sanford's investment in this has to do with building a national brand and being a player on the large stage, especially as it relates to sports medicine.
Yeah, there's no denying, obviously, that the brand has been lifted to an international level, like you said, in Tokyo. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but even the Sanford Pentagon and LFA and all of that going on. I mean, it's certainly elevated. Where I grew up in the Midwest, so I had heard of you guys, but I mean, even down here in Texas, I now hear about you guys a fair amount. So it's certainly elevated the brand. There's no denying that. Now, just to talk a little bit about the Sanford Sports Institute that you touched on a little bit earlier, they've been doing studies on MMA concussions with local fighters, I believe, not team members, but with local fighters for a while, but since back in 2017. Have you been a part of that at all or been involved in that research?
That mostly has been coordinated by Dr. Thane Muntz. I mean, Thane has a great vision for how to get a handle on concussions. He has put together studies to where he has pressure monitors in the helmets of our youth football kids, and I think he's got 6 years of data on that, following all the youth football in our area for concussions, as well as developing more sophisticated ways to do analysis on MMA fighters. You know, the usual SCAT test or whichever test you want to talk about that has to do with football players or whatever is just not as pertinent to MMA fighters, in that the difference in picking off a shot versus getting knocked out is about 1,000th of a second. So he's developing a lot more sophisticated testing, and we've collaborated on that in terms of hand to light coordination, peripheral vision, these type things that will really let us know when is it really safe to put somebody back in the cage. Because if you look historically, when people start to get knocked out, they get knocked out more frequently. And why is that? And what do the MRIs look like for that? So these are areas that we're going to pursue. And Thane is the driving force there, and Dr. Lisa McFadden is the director of Sports Science Institute. I'm just kind of a big fan, and in what ways I can assist them clinically. And my physician assistant for 24 years is now working with them to coordinate between the more raw science and how to integrate that into clinical applications. And so we're coming together with those standards. They are the driving force. I'm just a big cheerleader. You know, orthopedic surgery is really just kind of arts and crafts. What they do is real science.
I think it might be a little bit harder than arts and crafts, but I get what you're saying there. Now, there was, when Sanford MMA essentially was branded, had that team made, there were some concerns regarding if MMA fighters on the team were going to be used in future studies, that there may be some ethical concerns. From your standpoint, is there any validation there that there are some ethics concerns you'd have to be wary of? And are there any plans to have some of the MMA fighters participate in any studies moving forward?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the only reason they have not to this point is we're still developing those protocols, and we want to really get it together, get our science together, get the protocols for the studies together before we implement them on the professional athletes, and just the distance from Sioux Falls, South Dakota down to Deerfield Beach in South Florida makes that a little bit more difficult. I don't think there's any ethical concerns. I think everybody is on the same page about what we're trying to do, and that is to change the sport for the better. We want to protect these athletes. We would like to steer clear of similar problems that the NFL had. I think we learned a great lesson from that. So to involve these athletes in these studies, I have no problems with. And of course, everything is on a volunteer basis. The beauty is that our team is just so deep in just being great people that they want to make a change too. I think they just don't look at the team as a good place to train, great coaches, whatever. I think they have captured our vision as well, and so I think that that says a lot for the caliber of individual we have on Sanford MMA.
Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, obviously, everything going on with COVID-19, especially as it pertains to Sanford MMA, with Gilbert Burns being pulled because of a positive coronavirus test, Aung La Nsang also testing positive, a couple other members. When you found out about the positive tests or heard about the positive tests on the team, what was your initial reaction, and how did you handle that news?
Well, it's very disappointing, especially since Gilbert had a negative test on Tuesday. He left here to go to Vegas to head to Abu Dhabi. So there are a lot of concerns, false positives, false negatives, antibody testing. Does that play a role? What does the CDC say now? What would be the what would be the best way to pursue this? And so we had protocols in place for how we were going to stay ahead of that game. We had initially shut the gym down and started a cleaning regimen. We started having distancing between our fighters. We started putting people, the program that I wrote that I've talked about before is putting people in small cohorts. You have your fighting partner, and a third guy, and then you have the coach. And that group of three are a small cohort that can train together. Fortunately, our facility is so large. We have almost 7,500 square feet of mat space. We can put multiple cohorts out on the mats with the coaches training them, going group to group, with the coaches maintaining distance, with the exception of when we're hitting pads. And so we've been really successful with that. But when we're not successful, when COVID hits, it hits this very small group and it doesn't hit the team as a whole. So yeah, we've had a couple of, we've had 4 or 5 positives. But fortunately, in this group of individuals, I think 4 out of the 5 are totally asymptomatic. And so what we found them just on random testing. So what we were able to do is just develop the guidelines, and I talked exclusively back with infectious disease people, back with chief medical officers at Sanford, and we developed a very aggressive protocol, a little bit more aggressive than what the CDC had at that time, which interestingly enough, now the CDC has shortened its time limit as well. So we have a 10-day break, and if you're asymptomatic on the 10th day, you're good to go. The hard part now is in testing to get in the cage. What tests are they using? How positive are those tests? I mean, we certainly saw in NASCAR, false positive test keep somebody out of a record-breaking race. So we hope the testing gets better. We have protocols. We're doing random tests at the facility. I'm hoping that the testing becomes more standardized, and I also hope that the fight commissions learn to embrace the science. They're a little bit behind, and it's not because they're trying to be behind. It's because each state has to have its fight commission sign on, and most of the fight commissions that sign on want to be extremely careful, as they should. They're protecting their state. But they're learning that if someone had COVID 6 weeks ago, depending on the test we use to retest them, they could possibly still be positive just due to the viral fragments that could possibly be swabbed from the nasopharynx. Well, that patient is not positive. That patient is not infectious. That just turned to RNA molecule positive on the test, and that particular athlete really is safe to fight. Well, that's the science, but heretofore, what we're seeing is if they test positive, they're not getting in the cage. So it's just some of those things, how we're dealing with those things. It's all in flux, but it's in flux for the better.
Yeah, testing is certainly, we've seen a couple of positive tests in the UFC, false positives, right, which then, people were allowed to fight. And testing is certainly something that's been hard hit from the entire medical community, saying we need to ramp up and get better at. And I would agree that, especially with some of the cases you're talking about, positive test doesn't necessarily mean that you're not able to fight. So with that in mind, though, for the athletes that did test positive, something that was a huge cause of concern and part of what happened in the college football realm, where they, some divisions essentially shut down, others are going to try and play. But I know that myocarditis is been linked to COVID in some cases. Is that something you're looking for, or not even that in particular, just other issues that these athletes may have from lingering COVID symptoms? Is that something you're tracking?
That is something we have as part of our protocol and when to test for that. Myocarditis is the indwelling of the virus actually into the muscle tissue. It's rare, it's there, it's been documented. It's something that we pay attention to. That study came out of, I believe, Michigan. I thought it was a very well done study. It gave us pause to actually change part of it as you progress. If your symptoms progress, if you actually have other symptoms, I believe in that study that none of the participants that developed myocarditis did that without having significant symptoms. So we're watching people as they develop in their symptomatology, and if they persist, then before we release them back in, we're looking at echoes and other ways to diagnostically see if they might have a propensity for myocarditis.
All right, makes sense. With obviously with events coming back into place, I mentioned LFA earlier. They've been at the Sanford Pentagon now. Got back up in July. I spoke with the CEO of LFA, Ed Soares, about LFA's return, and he mentioned that Sanford Health was instrumental in getting them to be back into the cage, to have kind of a bubble, and in order to get events back and going. Were you involved at all in that, or consulted on that?
Yes, back in the end of March, there was talk at that point in time about actually even maybe trying to do a UFC event here in South Dakota, because South Dakota was weathering the COVID storm. So we got together with Sanford senior administration and discussed protocols that would be required if you were going to bring people in, and how to isolate them. Fortunately, the Pentagon as well as the field house are all right there by the airport. So you can get directly from the airport to those facilities with an on-site hotel and a way to provide food. And all of the protocols that we discussed at that point in time, what it would take to put on that level of event, were boiled down into how we would deal with LFA. And we, there were a lot of options on the table how to use the Sanford Pentagon. You've got this great healthcare system that's totally bought in to the health and well-being of these world-class athletes. And how are we going to use those resources to better the sport? And so I thought it was a natural to be able to provide that. But there was a lot of work that went into what it would take, and how to isolate, how to test. You almost have to imprison them in their hotel room until the results come back, how to get faster testing. And so yeah, all of that was part of the original plan of, if Sanford was going to be a participant in MMA and provide these facilities, it would have to be under protocol of best practices, and that's what they did, and did very well.
And obviously we've seen how events have been put on in this pandemic, given the protocols and the particular promotions and the way that they've handled things, whether that's LFA or the UFC or Bellator. In your mind, from a medical standpoint, if you could have a wish list of how to put on an event, how would you do it?
Well, I think my opinion will change as the science changes as well. But I think pretty much the protocols that were used for LFA in Sioux Falls recently are very consistent with what's being done UFC Bellator One Championship. I mean, Jeff Davidson is a wonderful medical director for the UFC and a great doc. And so he and I have conversations. And I know that he is such a top-notch guy, that the same level of care that we want for those athletes are the same that we want for LFA. It's all the same in how you protect against disease. So in my estimation right now, so that we minimize transmission. It's the idea that they come in, they are tested, they are isolated until the test on their cornerman, their coach, their training personnel, whoever has accompanied them, is all negative. Then we give them clean space to work out during the week. We give them access to nutrition. That's one of the hardest things, really, is when you go to a fight. I've been to accompanied fighters to Madison Square Garden, and you find yourself walking up and down 8th Street trying to find a healthy place to get the kind of pre-fight food you need. Well, Sanford's got that covered there with the Blue Rock. So having the nutrition in place, having the protections in place, and you know, a lot of it's fighter attitude, and everybody's fighters have just had great attitudes about, yeah, this is terrible, this is inconvenient, this isn't how it used to be, but this is how it has to be for right now in order to continue our sport. And so everyone has had just great attitudes about it. So getting those fighters in, having the minimal number of people at the cage, you've got your judges, you've got your cage doc, you've obviously got the referee, and then you've got your corner people. And just minimize those people. Now, what we're going to see as experience ramps up, and are we on a second wave of this virus? Can we loosen some of that? I think so. I'm really very interested to see. My state I used to live in, South Dakota, hosted Bike Week with 250,000 bikers, rather unrestricted in Sturgis. And, you know, it's about the time to see, is there going to be any ramping up of cases from that? If not, all of a sudden you start getting the idea that immunity may be closer than we think. And if so, then we start letting a certain number of fans back in, and then more and more until we get back to normal. But I still think that's a little ways off. So right now, my wish list is we continue to fight, although it has personally been very difficult for me to not attend fights with my fighters. That's really one of the great joys of getting to do what I do. So treating them from afar, fight week, but then I'm still going down to Florida once a month at least, and seeing them there in the facility and treating them down there. So my wish list would be we get back to normal as soon as possible, because it's fun. But from a medical standpoint, it is what it is now, and we're just going to continue to push those standards.
And as you mentioned, we're hoping to get back to normal here sooner rather than later. And some promotions, not MMA as much, but with we've had bare knuckle fighting championship have limited seats. We've had pro wrestling start to open up some seats. In your opinion, is it safe to do that, or is it better to wait at this time?
Yeah, I don't want to be the example of how to do something wrong, but you've got to have people who are willing to push the envelope. And again, in terms of the athletes, the level of athletes we're talking about, I think it was one of the ESPN commentators asked about why I would let Gilbert Burns go down to Brazil and fight. This was at the very beginning of COVID. And I was like, Gilbert Burns, if he gets COVID, he might have a sniffle, but probably not. So for the athletes, the risk is extremely low. Now you start introducing fans and the general public in, that's a different group. So for me, I'm happy to see the information that we will gather from other folks, and hopefully we don't have any problems, and we can open things back up with a good sense that we're not putting people at risk.
Yeah, and with you mentioned earlier about Deer Beach, Florida. I believe it was yesterday. There was a press release about that new state-of-the-art facility for the Sanford team. The team is fully moved there. Everyone is training there now. It seems to be up and running. With that new, because I looked at some of what the facility offers. It looks like, compared to some of the other MMA gyms I've visited, it looks like a whole different level. With that, are you looking to expand the team at all, or to broaden the team's capabilities, maybe even hold events there? Because it does have a full cage and has enough space that you technically could, correct?
Oh, you could. We have been very fortunate in that the investment by Sanford and other sponsors. There are other team sponsors as well. Just Sanford's kind of the primary. Due to the investment there, that is an exclusive MMA gym for us. So it's at this point in time, it's exclusive for our team. Yes, we would like to expand our team, but with the right people. There are a lot of people. We wanted to be the team that people wanted to join, and we're seeing that. Henri Hooft, Kami Barzini, and Greg Jones are three of the most phenomenal coaches anywhere, and they draw people on their own. They didn't need this facility, but they have come alongside and been great teammates in this. And so what we would like to do would be expand it. You'll have to get more coaches. These guys can't keep traveling every single week somewhere, which is pretty much what they're doing now. So we would like to expand our staff. We'd like to maybe expand from 48 to 60. I don't know what the number would be. It would just be on a per athlete basis. So yeah, I'd love to see us expand. We're going to expand our clinical capability there in the facility. I've got a very nice medical clinic there that I can do small procedures in there, as well as consultations and conferencing. And then we have a fighter lounge, and then that's connected directly to strength and conditioning, the recovery room, where that we can use some state-of-the-art modalities. So yeah, we've been very fortunate to get to start with the state-of-the-art facility, while we continue to also maintain the more southern facility, which formerly was where Hard Knocks was. So we're using that more for our development folks. So it's just a great position to be in, and I'm hoping that we're going to create an opportunity where that more and more fighters want to come be part of what we're doing.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's hard not to look at that team and say that you don't want to train under those coaches or some of those guys, especially with the accolades again. And, again, obviously up for the Gym of the Year award. Good luck to you in that. You're up against good competition, but it's hard to deny what Sanford has built there. Last question just for me. Thank you so much for all the information. This has been very informative. It's been great. Last question for me, though, is as someone that's been in the sports medicine field, someone who's working with MMA exclusively to push to the next level of safety and recovery, all of those nutrition, all of those aspects of the sport. In the next 5 to 10 years, do you think there will be any major breakthroughs or any one area of the sport that might reach a new level in terms of whether that's fighter recovery getting better, whether it's nutrition being down pat so we don't see some of these weight cuts and misses? Where do you think this research leads in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the two major areas that we're focusing on, one is nutrition. Every time you think you have a handle on it, you don't. There's a lot that can be done with nutrition. I recall back 2013, the title fight that I attended with Chris Weidman. I mean, what was just the accepted practice back then was you make weight and then it's just let's load up. Yeah, and what we know now, it's how you load up. Chris was very gracious to accept my counsel back then, and what we've learned since then. What we're doing now with our team is phenomenal in terms of how to manage glycogen stores, how to deplete those to get to the weight, because that's the only way you're really going to make weight. Certainly, if you have to, for some reason, do it in a rapid fashion, which we're really getting away from. But it's deplete your glycogen stores, get your weight, and then you have to replenish those stores in the next 24 hours, especially if you're going to go the distance. So nutrition is really an area that we're looking to specialize in. Something Sports Science Institute is also interested in, and it's not the same for everybody. I mean, there are some people who perform best on plant-based diet. There are some people for whom that is not the key answer. So nutrition is really a big thing, and you know, for an orthopedic surgeon to learn nutrition, you have to get one of those books for dummies. But it's been a transition. The other is biometrics, and so we're working now. We have a pilot study set up for some of our elite level guys to look at when these guys are stressing their body, and everyone's not the same. How do you manage and evaluate normal growth hormone release at certain times of the day, and how does that response to stress, and how does emotional or psychological stress that may be from an outside pressure, how does that affect your recovery, and when is the best time for you to particularly work out and get the most benefit from it. And so there's a whole parameter of biometrics that we're starting to apply more intensely, and then have our athletes buy into that and be willing to change what they think is their norm. So many get into this is what I do for a fight. Well, you know, it's hard to tell somebody that's undefeated that you can do something better. But our guys are very open to the science that Sanford brings to the table. And so nutrition and biometric observations, I think, will be the next 5 years in terms of how do we get people where they need to be in camp? How do we get people to their weight? And then how do we reignite the fire in their metabolic process immediately after they make weight, but also place in the energy stores that are going to have them hitting on all cylinders at the highest metabolic level when they step in that cage, and maintain that metabolic level through 25 minutes if need be.
Well, I'm certainly excited to see where that research goes, and excited to see where Sanford MMA goes. Again, great informative interview. Thank you so much for the time. Good luck on the World MMA Awards. Fingers crossed that you get that gym award, and thanks again for everything, and stay safe and healthy out there.
Thank you, Patrick. Same to you, and thanks for having me on.